Hello and welcome to the Tour Report from Secret Golf. Well, this week it's the Wyndham Championship, which always signifies the end of the regular season, the week before the FedExCup Playoffs. And well, this year they look a little bit different with only the top 70 as opposed to the top 125 making it to the FedEx St. Jude. Right, Elk, we're going to get into all of that. But last week at the 3M Open, Lee Hodges went wire to wire for his first victory on the PGA Tour. And man, what a final round. What a performance really all week from him. 2 eagles on Sunday, and he ended up winning by 7 strokes over your pick, JT Poston.
Yeah, Lee Hodges, Diane, it's another one of these storylines that we're getting. You know, we're starting to learn about a lot of different players. So Heath Vergala, all these younger guys coming through. Lee Hodges, another guy out of Alabama. I didn't know he played at University of Alabama where JT and all these guys were. So learning more about the tour players, played flawless golf on Sunday. I watched the last 9 holes. I was pulling the course for our own JT Poston, who finished up with a triple bogey on the last hole, trying to put the pressure on Hodges, but it was all too much. Hodges got his first victory. He had his sweetheart bride there. The coach came in from Alabama. They had milkshakes. Everything went well for them on Sunday, but we're moving down to Greensboro, Diane. That was the home of my first tour victory. So I know how important it is for a lot of these guys. You've already spoken of that next week starts the playoffs, top 70. I'm a little disappointed, to be honest with you, that the FedEx Cup goes all the way to October, because what made this tournament so compelling was this was the tournament where you kept your tour card. And this week, to me, I know it's not with you because we already talked about it, is a bit of a flop. It's a bit of a flop for me because I'm excited about our picks and our prospects and what we're talking about. But look, there's only about 25 of these guys coming from Greensboro to go into the playoffs. They're going to be tired. They're waiting on the other 40 Lions or Tigers or Predators over there that are getting ready to swallow them up over there. And this is sort of what's left of the tour this week, so to speak. So we're going to talk about that, of course, but I'm just sort of giving you my 2 cents worth there.
It's so funny because we did disagree about this, because I think this is one of the most exciting weeks that we see all year on the tour. And
used to be.
Well, I love the fact that the playoffs are now the top 70. You know, the top 125, they lock up their full playing privileges for next season. And they have until the end of the RSM Classic. So mid-November to do so. But the top 70 right now are being rewarded with these playoff events. And I like it. We've got it's called the FedEx Cup fall season now. And we're back to a calendar year season on the PGA Tour. But this week, there's a lot on the line for a lot of guys. And with it being the top 70, there's still a good amount of volatility. There's some big names outside of the top 70 right now who are trying to battle their way in. Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, Adam Scott. Have a look at the rankings here. Austin Eckroat being the bubble boy right now on number 70. But there's so much volatility. Justin Suh. Obviously he's been a name that's been on our lips a lot this year. Davis Thompson, sorry. But look at those guys that are 60 to 69. Sam Ryder had a good week last week. Aaron Rai has been super consistent, but none of these guys are safe. And we're really going to be watching for that top 70 mark this week at the Wyndham.
Yeah, and there is a couple of stories that you've noted there. I think Shane Lowry will probably get into the Euro Ryder Cup team, don't you think? I don't think Justin Thomas has a chance at all. I think 0% chance of him getting on the Ryder Cup team. I think he'd be happy if he made it to the Tour Championship. But, I can try to get excited with you on this event, but, we're talking about the guys that are just going to get into the tail end of the playoffs. I mean, Rahm and all these guys are all sitting over there waiting for these sort of guys to come out of the jungle that have been fighting there for the last month to go over there and get gobbled up next week because they're at the bottom end of the 70. But I get it, Diane. No. I get it. I mean, we rarely ever do.
I can come back with an argument to that, and it's Adam Scott, who last year he played his way into the playoffs. He fought so hard. He made it to the first event. He then made it to the second event. He made it all the way to the Tour Championship at Eastlake. So Adam Scott was a brilliant example of somebody who battled hard, had a couple of third place finishes and made it all the way to Eastlake. And look at him right now. He's sitting at number 81 in the standings. So he's someone who this week at the Wyndham, a tournament he's played well at before, he's going to be trying his hardest to make it into that number 70.
He's had a good attitude all year. I see his birthplace was Adelaide. That's surprising. I've never seen that. I thought he was from Brisbane. But anyway, that's another story. Now, there's some interesting storylines, Diane. I think knowing that if you're playing this week and you're sort of like your brother who's down the list a little bit on the FedEx Cup and he has all the way to October, is it October to get November. Into the top one, all the way to November to get his status for next year. That's a bit of a relief for these guys. It won't be as compelling. I'm sorry to tell you that because the 125 does not finish this week, there's two things are going to happen. There's going to be about 6 guys that make it into the playoffs next week that aren't already in it. And there's about the other 130 guys are going to go home and have 3 weeks off and watch the playoffs on TV. That's where we're at. However, we have a great course, Donald Ross course, Sedgefield in North Carolina, one of the great layouts. I like this week, Diane, because distance is not a factor. And a lot of dog legs, a lot of sort of over-the-top shots, a round tree-line course, beautiful design golf course, low scores. I mean, we saw Brent Snedeker here a few years ago shoot a 59. We saw JT Poston went 72 holes, Diane, broke a 1981 record, or tied Lee Trevino for no bogeys for the whole week. And I have to tell you, you know I was on JT Poston, and I have a story to talk about him this week. I looked at everything hard, but there's no one coming into this event more prepared to play well than JT Poston.
Well, let's talk about JT, because you had picked him last week for the 3M Open, and he ended up finishing tied for second. On the 72nd hole, his tee shot landed in the rough by the water, and he went for it to get on the green in 2. Ball bounced off a rock just before the green and landed in the middle of the pond. He ended up missing a 5-footer for double, so triple bogey, knocked him into a tie for second and cost him $260,000.
I know.
That amount of money is enough to make anyone feel sick when he's such a good putter. A 5-foot putt for JT on the other 71 holes would have been an absolute given. But obviously, he knew what was on the line and his head had to be absolutely scrambled. But he said every other time, he would go for it again and again and again. He doesn't regret going for it. But what do you make of that situation?
Well, how much did he lose? 260,000?
Yes.
That's more money than I won in Greensboro in 1990 for the win. However, I had just got a small house in 1990, Lisa and I, and I took that money, that 225, went and paid the bank straight off. So I was in good shape with that one. No, I think, he was putting a fair amount of pressure on Hodges. I guess they're good friends, and you never know what's going to happen on the last hole. I mean, what if JT skids one up there out of that rough and gets on the green and makes a 3, and then Hodges lays up and maybe he spins it in the water. I mean, anything good. You got to go for it. I mean, you're not really. A lot of people say to us all the time, "What is it like standing over a putt for 500,000?" Well, you're not really thinking about the 500,000. You're thinking about the score. You're thinking about the position you're in. No, I think JT was trying to put pressure on all day, and he just so happened it was a little late in the day. I think birdied 15, birdied 16. Here he comes, trying to put a bit of pressure on Hodges, but Hodges had too much going for him.
And Elk, it wasn't just JT Poston who had a good week. We had also picked EMILIANO Grillo and Keith Mitchell, who both finished within the top 10. And it was a great week for Mitchell. After, a run of frustrating golf where he missed the Open in Scotland, then he ended up not getting into the field for the Open Championship. came over, played in the Barracuda and missed the cut, knowing that he was round about that 70 number in the FedEx Cup standings. And last week's finish jumping him into 57th place. So that was a really, really important week for him.
Really important now that I think he's withdrawn this week from Greensboro. So he should hold that spot. I think I read today that Mitchell's out. So 13 spots. Yeah, I think he's pretty safe. There's not 13 guys going to pass Mitchell to get into the playoffs. So, yeah, we're pretty close to our picks last week. You know, I'm looking like you are. We look at this together, looking for these trending players. This week's slightly different. I think again, you and I are quite off center on this, but this event anything could happen in this event. But I'm still looking for two types of players. Ones that have energy, of course. We can get right onto it. My pick this week has to be JT Poston. I mean, he's won this tournament here before. I mean, I looked everywhere to say, hey, is JT too tired to play this week? He's been in Scotland. He was at the Open. He was at 3M. He was at Hartford where he finished sixth at the Scottish, played decent at the British, second last week, won this tournament without a bogey a few years ago, driving the ball really well. I watched, he's on TV, when you listen to the commentators talk about JT, talk about how good he putts. And we've been saying this for years. And he kind of plays good almost every year at this time of the year, Diane. I talk about biorhythms to you all the time. He's won this tournament. He won John Deere a couple of weeks ago, 2 years ago. There's just nobody playing any better golf than him. And this field, quite honestly, is quite weak. And there's nobody has more momentum than JT. Knows his course really well. So I'm just going to keep riding Poston.
That's, looking, as you say, how he's been playing. 3 top 6 finishes in his last 4 starts. And even looking back, you talk about him in these biorhythms and times of year where he plays well. His whole season has been, kind of in waves. He'll go through a period of, miscuts or not great finishes. And then all of a sudden he'll have like 3 or 4 events bunched together where he'll play really well. And right now, this is definitely a wave that we have to ride for JT. So I'm not surprised that you're picking him. I'm also baffled at the fact he's 30-1 this week. Not only that, I had a look around and found him at 40-1, and I cannot believe it.
He's the best player in the field form-wise by a mile. It's never putting with JT. It's never putting. He's always got that part of the game down. When you think about his other JT, Justin Thomas, it's all about putting. So it's never about putting with Thomas. This week's going to be a low-scoring affair. It's almost always with JT Poston about driving. And his driving's gotten considerably better. And I must say, his putting over the last 6 weeks is just leaps and bounds where he is in strokes gained. So he's just on fire with the putter. This week's going to be low scoring, as we talked about. It's going to be hitting the second shot on the green, Diane, and making putts. And all my players this week are guys that have momentum, guys that are close to getting into that top 70 that you talked about, and have some recent form. That's what I'm looking at this week.
Well, you went right into your pick of JT Poston, who's your outright favourite. But let's talk a little bit about the course. Sedgefield Country Club, and Poston is going to feel very comfortable here, bearing in mind he won in 2019 and went bogey-free, as you said, which is just outstanding. It's at a par 70, just over 7,100 yards. And, short course, a real positional course. Accuracy is going to be rewarded, that approach shot. It's not really a distance course, and the past champions prove that. This is a Webb Simpson course. He's always done very, very well around here. Kevin Kisner, Tom Kim won last year, and unfortunately, due to injury, he's not going to be playing this year. But, accuracy, excellent putters, and as you say, guys that really have something to play for this week. They're definitely making up my picks. But yeah, I think JT Poston is the real model. And even that year that he won, Webb Simpson had, just an amazing couple closing holes to really give him a run for his money. But he's the kind of poster child model of how you can go about and do well around Sedgefield.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's not a long hitters course. If John Rahm and all these guys were playing here, they wouldn't even be the favourite. This is a ball control course. It's quite a hilly golf course, Sedgefield, meaning that there's shots you hit over hills down to laying up short of little hazards. You can hit it down there a bit further, but it bottlenecks in, so players elect to stay back a little bit. Almost everybody, Diane, plays the course the same way off the tee, so length's not a factor. So what happens, what separates everybody when length's not a factor? Second shot, approach next to the pin, and then, of course, putting and chipping. So it's a pretty open field this week. There's guys jockeying all over the place, not just the top 70, but I've got a couple of picks on the lower end here that have interesting stories as well.
Okay, right. Well, let me give you my outright favourite, and this is going to come as absolutely no surprise. This guy is having a fantastic season. And when we did our re-ranking this week with our unique algorithm, then he came out at number 1, which I was not surprised about. Again, the one thing that's surprising me is the fact that the odds for this guy are so much higher than I thought they would be. I had a look around, and the highest I found him at is 35 to 1. 30 to 1 seems to be the kind of going odds for Denny McCarthy this week. Now, if you followed this show for a while, you'll know that I'm a big fan of McCarthy, and I've been picking him for such a long time. But if you look at a course that was going to really set up for his game, and a time in his career and in the season where he could take home a trophy, this would be it. He's 11 top 20s this season. He had that runner-up finish at Memorial in June, and he's had 2 top 7 finishes in his last 3 starts. He's an incredible putter. He's first in strokes gained putting when you look at the field this week, first inside 10 feet on the tour, and 2 top 15 finishes at this tournament before. Best one is a 9th place in 2020. So listen, if there was ever a time, because McCarthy has been trending this entire season, and really, as I said, the highlight has been that runner-up finish at Memorial when he lost in a playoff. But I mean, this would just be the ideal ending before the playoffs for Denny McCarthy, because we're all kind of expecting it. And as I said, this course just sets up perfectly for his game. So yeah, 30 to 1 being the kind of average, 35 to 1 when I had a little hunt around, but an outstanding price for McCarthy this week.
Yeah, McCarthy is another one of these young guys that we're waiting for them to win, There's talk of him being on the Ryder Cup team. I don't think he's going to get on the Ryder Cup team if he doesn't win. I don't think you can. There's just too many Americans down that list. Do we have that list there to have a look at the Ryder Cup? Denny McCarthy is in the conversation, but without a win, I don't think, Zach Johnson would have a pretty tough time, Diane, putting in, where is he there? There at number 15,
Yeah, he's 15.
So, you've got Sam Burns right there ahead of him, the match play champion, Ricky Fowler, who's won this year, Keegan Bradlin, who's won. I mean, there's a lot of guys, Diane, around him that would have to get, past to pick McCarthy. So, I'm with you on riding these trends. Is McCarthy saving himself for the playoffs, or is he putting all his eggs into this week's basket? I'm sure they don't quite think that way. They're always trying to play well and win, but McCarthy's such a great putter. This is a good chance for him to pick up his first win.
Yeah, just an amazing putter. There's got to be so many guys on tour that look at the likes of Denny McCarthy who very, very rarely misses anything, rarely puts a foot wrong on the greens. And there's so many guys that when we look at our stats and we look across the board and we're taking in kind of 5 key stats, they're green, 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 red, strokes gained putting. And McCarthy's been happily sitting within the top 3 for the entire year.
I heard a great quote from McCarthy, and I don't know if it's his quote. It was from him. I don't know if it's his, but he said something like about his putting. He doesn't really care how he does it with hole putts, that is. He just cares about, getting it online. He doesn't really think too much about his stroke, doesn't think too much about much at all. Just thinks about how to get it online. And That's very interesting because so many guys worry about every little movement in their stroke and try to get everything perfect. And here's McCarthy, the number one putter on tour, just kind of letting it go, and that's we always I always hate those guys that putt so good. When you play with Crenshaw, same thing. Just looks like he's painting the side of the house with his putter, doesn't have a care in the world. And we're over here trying to manage every inch of our stroke to keep it on line, So, McCarthy's got a great chance this week.
Yeah, especially because scoring is going to be low, as you said, so he's going to need to make a lot of putts. So I'm going to go with Denny McCarthy at the top. You're taking JT Poston, both round about 30-1 this week. Baffling, like crazy. Going back to Justin Thomas quickly, he has to finish solo 18th or better, by the way, this week to make it into the playoffs. We were just talking about putting. Look at JT's stat right now in this field. He's 110th in strokes gained putting and sitting at 79. And, best finish at the Wyndham. He hasn't played this tournament for a very long time. This is not one that was regularly on his schedule, but it's not a course that he's done well at before. And Thomas, it's 35 to win, 35-1 to win this week.
Got zero momentum going forward right now. He's just hates, I don't say he hates being here, but he hates not having control of his schedule. He's got to do this if he wants to play in the playoffs. He's got to try to keep pushing forward to get into the playoffs, try to get on the Ryder Cup team. I don't think he's got a chance, Diane, at all. I think he's got things he's got to work out, deal with, etc. I don't want to weigh too much into it because everybody has weighed in on JT. He's there, he's trying hard, he's working, he's doing his thing. Let's see what happens.
Okay then, so we're moving on to our ones to watch. These are guys at slightly higher odds. I say slightly, that's definitely relevant for my pick this week. Do you want me to kick it off?
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm taking a German, and this guy hasn't really been in the Ryder Cup conversation, I guess, but he's very underrated in general right now. And
Alex Scheiker? Alex Scheiker?
It's a great win for him last week. Did you watch the Senior Open and the weather that they played in?
I watched about 5 holes and I just couldn't believe it. And I was thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not there.
10 over par, finished 7th. I think it was absolutely wild. Padraig Harrington in the Ryder Cup conversation now after losing to Alex Cheika in that playoff. But anyway, this guy that I'm picking for my one to watch, he's sitting at 64th in the FedExCup standing. So yes, has to have a good week this week, but just has had a very underrated season. And I'm talking about Stephan JAEGER. He's 35-1 this week. And he's had 7 top 25 finishes this year, which is just brilliant. As I said, needs to have a good week to lock up his place in the playoffs. But I was having a real dig around his stats. 7th in the field for strokes gained around the green. He's 12th in strokes gained total. And yeah, we're seeing him at 83rd in strokes gained putting there. But he leads the tour in total birdies this season. He's going to need a lot to really boost him up the leaderboard this week. But he's got really, really good stats. And at 35-1, I love these odds. For Stephan JAEGER, as I said, underrated. We've been keeping an eye on him on the tour report because, as we say, we track the trends. And he's really been trending in the right direction all season. And his FedEx Cup position shows that. So I really like him this week at 35-1.
Yeah, similar odds to Justin Thomas. And you think, these two players, one really well and you don't know the other at all. And one's trending in a certain direction. If they were playing a match play tournament between JAEGER and Justin Thomas today, JAEGER would be the favorite. And that's hard to believe, but that's the way it goes in golf. I was looking similar things as you, Diane. Justin Suh, who's a bit of a sort of a attention grabber. He plays good in spurts this year. I'm not quite picking him. I'm just watching him this week. I think he'll do well. I think he's 77th. So a good week this week. He can put himself into the playoffs next week. But I'm looking at Sam Ryder, who finished, you know, he's number 2 in putting on the tour. He's like number 5th in, number 35th in strokes gained approach. Those are the 2 stats that I'm interested in, how you make birdies at this course. The only weak stat that Sam Ryder has, of course, is driving distance, and that didn't matter because he almost won San Diego this year. You remember his mother was getting interviewed walking down the fairway on like the 15th hole, Diane, and all of a sudden, you know, Sam Ryder's mother's hair was trending on Twitter and all this. Well, I think it's time for Sam Ryder to step up a little bit here now. Again, he's number 2 in putting. I watched him last week. I talked about him on the show, but he finished 7th last week. So that's really, I like that a lot. And I think this is a chance for this young fella to get his first win because he's on that bubble as well.
Okay, and he's 110 to 1. Like,
I know.
You are rolling out the big numbers for your one to watch this week.
He should be a lot lower than 110 to 1. I mean, he's the second best putter on the tour on the tour out there. I mean, I don't know how they're getting these odds this week, Diane. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I said I'm taking Stephan JAEGER at 35 to 1, but I've got another name that we are definitely watching because, again, phenomenal odds. Eric Hole is 60 to 1. And again, if you look at someone who has had a great season, he's 40th in the FedEx Cup standing. So the way the playoffs go, top 70, top 50, top 30. He's looking at Eastlake right now and taking it all the way to the end. He's at 8 top 25s, runner-up at the Honda. His stats are amazing. 6th in strokes gained total, 8th in putting, 20th around the green, 13th in approach. And his off-the-tee stat is the one that is bright red for him at 115th. But man, he's like top 20 in 4 of the 5 stats that we look at. And this course should set up really well for his game. So 60 to 1 Eric Cole I thought was amazing.
Yeah, Cole, again, there's another one that we've been tracking, you know, was right there at the Honda Classic this year. Played good all year. One that went away. We had him on our board for the John Deere after he went away after having a great week, I think, at Travelers, and then went off and won another little tournament in Pittsburgh, gave the money to charity. I told you, there's guys that are dangerous that give money away, Diane, because they don't care about it. They want those trophies.
I love that. Okay, so we've given you a few names. We're definitely watching Eric Cole and Justin Suh, but you're taking Sam Ryder as your one to watch, and I have Stephan JAEGER. And then we move on to our dark horse picks. Now, these are guys over 100 to 1. You've already given us 110 to 1, so I can't even imagine where you're going for yours.
Well, I sort of have 2 stories.
Okay.
When we had to talk... I'm going to give you the story on the first one, then I'm going to pick the other guy. But at the top of the show, we talked about how this tournament was really important when at the end of the week, you either knew you had your ticket for the next year or you didn't. And now you've already explained to us that goes all the way through November. But remember, CHESSON HADLEY at this tournament a few years ago had a hole-in-one on number 16 to pretty much secure his tour card, you know, to get into the 125. Well, would you know it that CHESSON HADLEY is 126 on the money list again, starting this week? But he's 25th in putting, Diane, and he hits greens really good, and he's probably going to play good this week at this course. He's got good vibes here. He's looking, you know, he's not going to make it to the Tour Championship unless he wins this event, but he'd really like to go to a 3-week break with about a top 10 finish this week. What are his odds? I don't have it on my board. Is it right there? He's
110
high.
to 1, yeah.
Yeah. But the guy that I'm really looking at who's taken advantage of the best situation that he's ever been getting is Zach Blair. Zach Blair has come out of absolutely nowhere, Diane. I mean, this guy was designing a golf course down in Georgia this year called Tree Farm and finished second in an elevated event on a medical exemption. He had to make X amount of dollars, X amount of points to get exempt for next year. Finished second in an elevated event at Hartford. Got a ton of points there. Just finished last week, Diane, tied for 13th. So now he's tied up his his ticket for next year, and he's 90th on the FedEx. Do you think he could take more advantage of even more of a situation than what he's already done twice this year by being on a medical, getting his ticket, getting in there, securing his card, and now he's going to leapfrog into the playoffs? Can he do it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's such a great story. I've been tracking him for a little while now, and super likable guy as well. When you see him, it's like you want to root for him when you're watching him on TV and checking his scores. So Zach Blair,
he's done it with 250 to 1, and he's done it with super low rounds on Sundays.
Okay, good. Right, so that is your dark horse. Mine is, well, when we see his stat card, you'll see him at 90 to 1. However, I did my research and I found him at 125 to 1. So I'm just saying he's a definite dark horse. I'm not trying to beat the system in any way here. But we've talked about Sedgefield and how it's a positional course, right? Accurate players will do well here. You have to hit a lot of greens. And Kevin Yu has just got a brilliant set of stats. So in the field this week, he's first in strokes gained off the tee. If I was to put that to you, like name me from this entire field who you think leads strokes gained off the tee, you're never going to guess Kevin Yu. But there you go. For the season on tour, he's 5th in total driving, 2nd greens in reg, and he's had 3 top 7 finishes this season, including a T6 at the John Deere last month. Worst stat is putting, yes, so he needs to perform well on the greens this week, but we know that guys can get hot with the putter. And at 94th in the FedEx Cup right now, Kevin Yu, you know, he needs to have an excellent week this week if he wants to jump up and stand any chance of making it to the Tour Championship. Not to the Tour Championships, to the playoffs. Well, he could make it to the Tour Championship. This could really be the kick that he needs to start a great run of form. But he's playing really well. And as I said, fantastic set of stats that really are going to suit Sedgefield Country Club. So Kevin Yu, I said I found him at 125 to 1, but he's round about that 100 mark. And I'm going to pick him as my dark horse this week.
I like it. You mentioned a name at the top of the show, Webb Simpson, who plays really good at this tournament in Greensboro. Yeah. Been watching him on Instagram, been working with a new coach. And Webb Simpson had trouble with his swing for a number of years and had a few problems, but he's changed his swing and it's starting to look really, really good. I've kind of been tracking this on Instagram. I'm not predicting that Webb Simpson's going to win this tournament, but when you see him swing this week, you're going to see surprisingly a much better looking swing from him, and his confidence is building. I can hear it in his voice when he's talking on the video. So I'm not quite ready to put him over the top yet, but maybe in a month or so. But he's on the lookout. Webb Simpson.
He's 75 to 1, and let me just tell you how he's played this tournament over the last couple of years. So last year he withdrew, but before that he went 7th, 3rd, 2nd, 2nd, 3rd, 72nd, anomaly year, 6th, 5th, and 11th. So, and he named his child Wyndham. So that tells you how much Webb Simpson loves this tournament.
I know. So he's coming.
Yeah, that's good. Interesting point. All right, so I'm taking Kevin Yu, and you are going with Zach Blair at 250 to 1 as your dark horse this week. All right, you know, looking at the guys right now, obviously we're focused on the top 70 who are going to make it to the FedEx St. Jude next week for the start of the FedEx Cup Championships, FedEx Cup Playoffs, sorry. But you know, just to talk about the volatility in the numbers, Martin Laird was such a great example last week. He was sitting at like 140 something in the standings and ended up finishing in a tie for 2nd after a 64 on Sunday. And he jumped up to 111th. So the guys that are further down, it's not like they're going to make massive jumps. You know, so it's hard, and that's why they've got the rest of the season to get within that 125. So even though we're focused on the top 70, it's really, you know, go time for these guys that want to make sure that they lock up their full card for next year.
Yeah, it's that kind of week, Diane. You know, it's it's not as awesome a tournament as it was when the 125 was going to seal it this week, because there's guys that can have a great week like a Martin Blair, or even your brother who's currently outside of the 125 could finish 3rd or 4th this week, doesn't sit with us because he's got all the way to November to do what he's got to do. But we're watching top 70. We're looking for emerging players. Is the Ryder Cup story on either team in the equation? I guess the only player we're looking at is Lowry for the Euros. So it's a great course, and it's worth tuning in, and it's worth listening to. It's worth knowing how to play this course. So we're looking for a low score. JT Poston, of course, is on a heater. I'm looking for him to make me look good this week, Diane.
I know, yeah. Well, after we had 3 top 10s last week, we're doing pretty well. We didn't get the winner, but we were close. And also, Justin Thomas is going to be a big talking point this week, as we said. He needs a solo 18th finish or better to make it to the FedExCup Playoffs. Bearing in mind, he's never missed them before. Huge, huge deal for him. And we're all rooting for JT, because a good week this week, who knows, could be back in that Ryder Cup conversation.
Everybody has their 10 cents worth. What do you think's going on with Justin Thomas? Because I have my thoughts as well.
Well, he just seems to, it's like the snowball effect as well. When things are not good, it's hard to get out of it, isn't it? It's like it just gets worse and worse and worse, and you're kind of digging deeper in a hole. Me, I like to look at all the intangibles, and things that are happening in their life. And I read the worst thing, that all this started when he got married. And I'm like, no, you can't disprove my theory. You're the expert, and you know Justin Thomas, JT's game, his swing. You've always called him a lifer, because he's one of these guys that is going to be around for such a long time. He's so hungry to go out there and win every week. What do you think, that it's just, impacting, and there's more pressure that he's putting on himself every week?
Well, I think I did inadvertently maybe put pressure on himself. He had a couple comments months ago that said he was going to try to do everything he could to be a much better player. That included giving up pizza and giving up beer. I mean, the guy weighs less than you do, which is not much. So I don't think how beer and pizza is going to affect him. And then the one that kind of caught my eye was he felt like at this point in his career, he said that he was underachieving. And I just didn't feel like that matched what I saw from JT. He's won 2 PGAs and a Players Championship. I would think from where he started and what he's been doing, I would say he's overachieving. So maybe he got away from the way he thinks about himself as a golfer. And then, of course, he has the famous Bones Mackay cat in for him. They seem like they talk a lot through every shot. I don't think of JT as a guy that needs to talk through every shot. He's been playing golf since he was 4. He knows what to do. Maybe he's looking at this thing a little too tight. I don't know. I would never offer any of that advice to him, but certainly he has slightly lost his feel for how he feels when he plays.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're all rooting for him. Obviously, it would be devastating to him if he didn't make it to the playoffs. So we'll all be keeping an eye on Justin Thomas this week. I
can tell you that there's about another 400 guys out there that are not crying for JT, because he's taken home the whole slice of the 17 million of the playoffs before. So don't get your handkerchiefs out just yet.
And being a past FedEx Cup champion, I think about Billy Horschel, and there's been a real decline in his game. He's starting to pick it up this season. However, people always talk about the fact that he was a FedEx Cup champion. So really that does hold a lot of weight. Thomas has been there before. He's going to get there again. His good mate, Ricky Fowler, we've seen where he was and the work that he's put to get back to where he is now. So it's not an end for Justin Thomas, but it's definitely a season he's going to look back on and feel very disappointed.
Well, and the media doesn't really know how to evaluate people that are in slumps anymore. I mean, Justin Thomas has missed some cuts. Anyone can miss a cut, but I think didn't he shoot like 61 recently up in Hartford? That's not really someone that's slumping to me,
Yeah, okay. All right, Elk. Well, thank you very much. That was our tour report this week for the Wyndham Championship. So the top 70, remember, that's the bubble that we're going to be keeping an eye on this week. To me, it's exciting, and I'll be tracking it every second. And again, it's a brilliant tournament, a great course, and one of those where there can be a lot of volatility and really anything can happen. So enjoy it this week, and then we'll be back with a jam-packed show next week for the start of the FedExCup Playoffs.